You're riding a bicycle from, where was it? Nelson?
Terrace, BC.
Terrace, BC.
So we're about halfway up Canada, and the goal was to end up in Haines. We all had bikes with bike trailers, some small tents, split boards. I actually had a keyboard on the back of my bike because I wanted to be the first person ever to bike tour up to Alaska with a keyboard. I'm not sure if that is a solidified fact in the world, but I know I've done it. If you know anybody else that's bike toured to Alaska with a keyboard, let me know. Hopefully they've done it after me or not done it at all.
Yep.
But
So it's like you're going on a bike ride. How long? We'll get there in 40 days.
well, we really didn't know anything. So we had 1,300 kilometers.
But what are we talking? Like every day is like the longest bike ride ever for 30 or 40 days.
You find your flow. So we went up to Terrace. We rode at Shames Resort, which is epic. If you guys ever get to Shames, it's a co-op resort. It's owned by the city. Epic place. Started off the bike ride, and we started off with a crew of 5 of us, and we actually had a little safety car, if that's what you want to call it. And I remember day 1 was really tough. I think my tires were deflated like halfway, and we were riding a pretty busy section of the road because the goal was to do the Cassiar Highway. And the Cassiar Highway is this highway that runs from just north of Terrace all the way up to the Alaska Highway. It's kind of the back route. Didn't do any biking, like I had said, and I also didn't look at what we were doing. I had no idea. So it's definitely pretty interesting. So day 1 was tough. We pulled out of town, and it was a super hard ride. Like, we had to get up to Kitawanga, where you turn left to get on the Cassiar Highway, and it's about 100 Ks, and that was the roughest 100 Ks because there's a lot of traffic. We're brand new. Bike tires were probably deflated, and we're on mountain bikes with bike trailers too, so these things are pretty hard to pedal. And then
Wow.
I think day 2, we pulled into the Cassiar, and I was in front of the group, and it's like 3 miles onto the Cassiar. This trucker just pulls over and stops in the middle of the road as I'm going up this hill on my bike, and he's all, "What the fuck are you doing?" He's just freaking out on me. He's like, either you're going to die or you're going to kill one of us. And I hadn't done any research into this trip, and I'm there by myself getting yelled at by the first trucker to pass me on this road, telling me that I'm going to die. And I'm just like, okay, what did I get into here? And the real crazy thing is, like, what I don't think any of us expected was how industrialized it was. Like, there's just mines and logging. So every single time you're getting passed, it's by a logging truck with like thousands of kilograms of wood on the back, and there's about 5-foot snowbanks, so you have like barely any room. So when a truck passed you from the back, it was like you just didn't know what was going to happen. And every time you just take it, you go up as far over to the side as you can, and you just kind of hope for the best. And if there was ever a moment that 2 trucks were going to be passing each other, you just got to hop off your bike and just get to the snowbank as quickly as you can. Like, that was the sketchiest thing because these trucks were unhinged. So plan was to split board off the side of the road. But once we started going and snow camping and just like biking, we were trying to do about 100 kilometers a day, which was pretty tough, like maybe 8 hours of biking. And, yeah, it was a total struggle to get up there. So we'd been biking for a while, camping on the side of the road, getting super wet, getting super tired. You wake up the next day, you're on the highway, your boots are soaked, and you're just looking up at the mountains around you. You're like, yeah, right, I'm not going to go split board right now. You know, it's just totally beat. And then we were kind of running out of time too, because we wanted to get up to Haines at an appropriate time, so we had time to kind of milk it up there. We got up to Jade City, and we were still a 5-man crew. And there was a little bit of friction in the crew. We had D-Wad. He was out jibbing this spot behind the building. And then this other kid who's kind of new and trying to figure out his role. So when we started, sorry, I'm jumping around a lot here, but when we started the bike ride, we really didn't have like roles. Who was going to do what's the team leader. And I think that kind of put us in a little bit of a bad spot, because if everybody knows what they're supposed to be doing, I think it's a little bit easier for people to fall into those roles. But when everybody's kind of arguing over like who's got the biggest, you know, it gets a little bit more frustrating for everybody. So that accumulated to sort of brawl in Jade City, which I want to set the scene for you guys. Jade City is a one-horse town on the side of the Cassiar Highway where they'd been mining asbestos for years, and there's only one building in this town, and they only sell jade. So you've got this beautiful stretch of highway. You're in the Alaska mountains, and about 7 o'clock in the morning, you could hear a pin drop, and then all of a sudden a full brawl breaks out between the crew. And then you just hear me yelling, "We're all fucking friends here," going crazy, you know. And after that, we realized that it wasn't gonna work out for us to get up there the way we were doing it. So we actually split crew. We decided me, Cater, and Johan, who were kind of like the more people had put this together, and those guys were doing a sequel to a movie they had done where they had taken a canoe down the Columbia in some frigid weather. We decided we were going to keep on going, and so we lost our safety car. And at this moment, too, we were kind of in between huge sections of the road. Like, we would stay in a hotel where we could, but then you'd do like 400 kilometers where there was just nothing. And so at that time, we had to be pretty well packed up, pretty well dialed in, and we were just camping in our tents on the side of the road wherever there was a pullout. But after we lost the crew, we were like running out of food. So we decided to leave Jade City, and we're on like 5 rations of top ramen left. And worst of all, I'm biking for 8 to 10 hours a day, and my stash has been depleted. And I don't know if you guys have biked for 8 to 10 hours for a day, but if you don't have a stash and you're trying to do that, you're just like, I'm just going to go absolutely mental in my mind, you know, like, it was helping me cope with the time. So I just realized then, I was like, what am I going to do? So I busted out the Sharpie, and on the back of my jacket that I had, I just wrote in big letters, "I need weed, please." So that day, we're riding up, three cars stop. 3 cars stop on the first day. On the first day, I've got like an 8. By day 4 of wearing this thing, I've got like a ½ ounce of weed, and we're totally out of food. And we're all like, yes. Should we switch the sign to "I need food" or something like that? But no, we're like, the road provides. And that's the beauty of taking away the safety car, is you put everything into the road. The road provides, you know. So the next day, had a bunch of weed. We rolled up to the Alaska Highway. We're still doing, so at this point, there's just 3 of us, and we're just going to get to Haines. So we're riding 100 kilometers a day for the next 2 weeks. And me, Johan, and Cater, we've already been doing this for 2 weeks, and we're in good shape. We're just busting out as much as we can. And once we get up to the Alaska Highway, we're on like our last ration of top ramen. I remember that morning. I woke up, had a top ramen, rode the bike for 5 hours, and stopped at lunch, had another top ramen, which at this point, the body was depleted. For sure. And that night, we rolled into this like 1-horse town that we could see on the map. And the only thing around is this one house that's being ran by a generator. And out front, there's like 10 wolves. They're like wolf-husky mix, but it just looks like there's 10 wolves out there. There's nothing else around. And I remember Johan went up to the door and he knocked. And like 20 minutes later, he came back out and he's got all these cans of food. And he's like, "They're going to cook us cheeseburgers. We're saved." So we camped out that night. The next morning, we had the cheeseburgers. We had like soup from the little cans, and I spilled a can of soup on myself, and I doused my puffy, which was like my big survival item, because you're biking with everything that you're going to have for the next 2 weeks, but you also don't want to overdo the bike setup. So it's like 1 extra t-shirt, 1 puffy, you know. And Puffy was destroyed. But next morning, those kind fellows let us in their house. We had some coffee with them, dried out the Puffy. And on the way back, actually, they told us about a cinnamon roll spot. So we grabbed the cinnamon roll for them, and we stopped on the way home and said, "What up?" Because we drove home from that one. But yeah, we just gave ourselves to the road. We were filling up our water bottles off the side of the road. People were stopping, and Tailgate Alaska was going on too. I still had this thing on my back that said, "I need weed." So there was like, you know, again, we're the novelty item. Everybody's pulling over. They're giving us, you know, beers, whatever we needed, which was rad. This little homie hooked us up with enough food to kind of like make us. I think Johan gave him a 50 and he gave us a bunch of cans of like Chef Boyardee or something, which was all we had until we got to the next town. And we crushed it out. We did like 1,200. We did, you know, 10 days of probably solid 80 kilometers a day every day. And then we got up to Haines. And we partied super hard, and we got super hungover, and it was sunny for the next like 3 days. So we're just like the biggest pile of shits up there for like the next day. The day after that, I think we fly out with Drake. We do the scope flight. which is crazy too. That was my first scope flight, and you're over the huge range, and it's like, where are you going to be dropped off? And it is a pretty crazy decision to make, just because the possibilities are endless, and you're trying to figure it out. And none of us had done that before either, so it was a big learning curve. And then after that, it just went full overcast for the next 4 weeks. So we had a few windows. We were staying at Steve Kerschel's. Everything smelled like fish. Steve Kerschel built this place, so there's like a wall, and then there's like a little crack about 6 or 8 inches. You walk behind that, there's another bedroom. You go to the right, there's like a crazy bathroom. I mean, this place was insane, like beds made out of hay and stuff. I didn't trust any of that shit. I was stressed out. So I set my tent up in the inside of the house. I was still sleeping in my tent, and I was still pulling the zipper shut all the way at night, because I was like, dude, this is sketchy for sure. And he's a crazy guy. He's got like this Faraday cage, and we want the Wi-Fi on. And every time he is like, you guys are going to die. You guys are going to die with this Wi-Fi on. And eventually, like 3 weeks later, we've just been splitboarding on the side of the road and getting nowhere, kind of, because we don't know what's going on. And I ran into Ryland in the grocery store in Haines, and he's like, dude, you guys look pretty bummed. Why don't you just come over tonight? And I came over that night, and he's like, there's this abandoned mining shack on the side of the mountain that you guys could probably splitboard to, and then from there, you guys could probably access it. So we had that in mind, and he had some photos of it, so we didn't have a GPS coordinates. We just had like photos from different areas, and we're like, all right, we're going to go up there. And we had like a 1-day weather window, so we packed up our small, like 25 liters with whatever we needed. We splitboarded up there in the storm, which was like full whiteout, so we're like stumbling around trying to find this cabin, and we do eventually find this like dilapidated old mining shack. It's all locked up, but we're able to like bust in. There's a tiny fireplace with a little bit of wood, which is so huge because that means we're not going to be having super soaked boots the next day. We get to this mining shack, and then you've got these insane mountains in the background, and we're like, oh, holy shit. And there's also this massive traverse that we have to do under the super sketchy snow, and we're like, well, we're not going to do that today. We'll just do that tomorrow at like 3 a.m, because that's going to be the time that it's safest. If you travel in the mountains at night, it's a little bit safer if you know where you're going, because chances of avalanches are less. Everything's cold. You're not dealing with temperature changes. So the next day, we splitboarded all the way from the road to the top of Caffeine, staying in this little shack for the night. And I remember the next day, there was like a huge storm, and it was like 3 feet of POW that we were splitboarding through. So it took us forever to get up there.
Was that shack up on the hill in the woods there?
Yeah.
Wow.
That was that shack. And we got up there, and I remember I dropped in first, and I was thinking I was going to have to look back, and I just did those first 2 turns, and I could tell the snow was bomber under my foot, like 2 feet of locked in snow, and I just didn't even have to look back and shredded that thing. And that was the only run that I got to do in AK for the whole bike trip. It was still worth it, but it was one run to bike all the way to Alaska.
Because after that, it just got shit?
It was just shit, dude. We had no weather windows. And then that's when Andrew sent me the photo of Jeremy and Forrest riding spines in Tahoe. And I was just like, God damn it, dude. What is happening? Mammoth was having this insane year. And that's when, after that bike trip, we drove back down. The car broke down on the drive down. On the drive up, it broke down too. It's just everything, Murphy's Law for sure. And then I hightailed it to Mammoth for meeting up with Jeremy and those guys. And that was my first time kind of doing a springtime camping, and super eye-opening.
Wow.
So, biked for how many days?
I don't know the exact days. We did actually splitboard off the side of the road. And one day we were stuck in Mesiatin Junction, and we were like eating with all these loggers and stuff. And they're basically like, it had snowed 6 inches on the road, and they're like, if you guys go today, you're going to kill yourselves or you're going to kill one of us trying not to kill you guys. And they drove up the road 70 kilometers to their logging site, and they drove back to where they knew we were at the hotel or mining camp. I don't think I'd call it a hotel. This place was crazy. You'd go to order food, and they had a full menu, but you had to say like, I would like the cheeseburger, but I will take anything you will cook for me, sir. And they would just give you whatever they felt like cooking you. Like, you couldn't ask for anything. It was super crazy. Anyways, these guys drive back, and they're basically like, yeah, you guys can't go today. So that held us back for a day. And I mean, thanks for those guys for looking out for us for sure. But we had a few rest days. I'm going to say the total bike ride was about 40 days to get up there, maybe 30 days, a lot of days, 100 kilometers a day. It was like 1,500 kilometers total. So like 15 days of biking, but you know, the days that there was a lot of snow on the road and stuff like that, we'd maybe only get 50 kilometers.
One run.
And that was all for the one run.
Good run.
It was
run.
probably the best one of my life for sure. After all that, and then splitboarding up there and getting on top and being the first one to drop and just like feeling that snow locked under me, because you don't know. Splitboarded for a while, but there's a lot of fresh snow, and you know, if you drop in and you feel like something might break, you're gonna have to look back and look around and see what's going on. But right away, I did like the first 2 turns, and I just knew it was locked in, and I could just rip into this thing.
Such a cool story. I mean, it's about as pure as the pioneers, you know?
It is.
They'd probably
yep.
be proud. Because when you said you had the keyboard when you biked up there, I bet the only people that had brought a piano was through a wagon. So they never put it on a bike.
They never put it on the bike.
So,
I had a box of wine and a keyboard. Those were my saving grace items right there.
That's incredible.
Dude, I remember while you were doing this, you would post these like selfie videos, which hopefully maybe you can dig a couple of these up for when this comes out. But like, I remember you'd be like filming yourself on the bike, like on the side of the freeway, and you're just like, fucking Worm is out of his mind. It's incredible.
Dude, it was Johan, like we lost the filmer, so we were setting up cameras too, which takes more time, but he was filming drone from his bike, following us for hours. He would just be like on the drone, riding his bike. He's absolutely crazy.
Wow.
But it was a crazy experience. And then going from there, I was so motivated because I'd just been skunked and it felt like the season was kind of ripped away from me. I'd spent all this time bike riding and Alaska didn't pan out. So hightailed it down to Mammoth, and that's where I met Inaki and went out with Jeremy for the first time, which was super eye-opening. And we went out to Bishop, and the next day we're on these like 3,000-foot vertical runs that look just like AK with 2 feet of POW in late April. So it was pretty amazing.